They looked down on the little girl for being small. But when they popped the truck's hood, everyone froze. Emily Johnson struggled to push the heavy toolbox down the dusty street in Oakland's industrial district. At just 11 years old, she seemed even smaller under the weight she carried. But the determination in her dark eyes revealed a strength few could see in someone so young. Everything changed when she arrived at Wilson & Sons auto shop. As she lifted the hood of the blue Mack truck that had been sitting idle for 3 days, she did something that left every mechanic there completely stunned. "Sweetheart, this isn't a place for kids," said Frank, a 50-year-old man with a prominent belly and hands permanently stained with grease. "Go play somewhere else." "I didn't come to play," Emily replied, adjusting the toolbox strap on her shoulder. "I came to work." The 3 mechanics in the shop burst out laughing. Mike, the youngest of them, slapped his thigh in amusement. "Work? You can barely carry that toolbox properly." "It's my dad's," she said, carefully setting the box down. Robert Johnson. The name made Frank stop laughing instantly. Robert was known throughout the neighborhood as the best mechanic around. He could fix problems others couldn't even diagnose. "Where's your dad?" Frank asked, his tone shifting slightly. "In the hospital. He had to stay there for a few days." What Emily didn't say was that Robert had suffered a serious work accident the week before. A hydraulic jack had failed while he was working under a car, and an iron beam had fallen on his leg. The doctors said he wouldn't be able to work for months. "So what do you want here?" asked Dave, an older mechanic chewing on a toothpick. "Mr. Frank called yesterday saying there was an urgent job. My dad couldn't come, so I did." Silence fell over the shop. After a few seconds, Mike started laughing again, louder this time. "Y'all hearing this? The kid wants to do her dad's job. It's about Thompson Transport's truck," Emily continued, ignoring the laughter. "My dad said you needed it fixed today." Frank glanced at the blue Mack parked at the back of the shop. The owner of Thompson Transport, Mr. William Thompson, had made it clear the truck had to be running by the end of the day. It was an important contract, and delays cost money. "Listen, kid, I know your dad's good at what he does, but this is a man's job. You should be studying, playing, doing kid stuff." "I do study," Emily said, "but I also know how to work on engines." "Work on engines," Mike repeated, shaking his head. "You can't even reach the hood properly." It was true. Emily was small for her age. Thin, with brown hair tied in a simple ponytail, she wore a faded beige t-shirt and jeans with grease stains on the knees. "My dad taught me," she insisted. "I know what to do." Frank sighed. The truth was, he was desperate. He'd tried contacting other mechanics in the area, but everyone was busy. Thompson Transport's truck had an engine problem they hadn't been able to fix in 3 days, and Robert was the only person he trusted with tough cases. "Fine," he finally said. "But you're just looking, no touching anything." Emily nodded and walked over to the truck. It was a Mack R600, an older model but well-maintained. The blue body still gleamed despite the road dust, and the engine, she knew, was famous for its durability. "What's wrong with it?" she asked. "It starts, but it's got no power," Dave explained. "Seems like it's not burning fuel right." "Did you check the injectors?" The 3 mechanics exchanged glances. That was too technical a question for an 11-year-old. "Of course we checked," said Mike, irritated. "We're not amateurs." "And the fuel filter?" "That too." "The fuel system?" "Kid, stop asking questions and let us work," said Frank, starting to lose patience. Emily moved closer to the engine. Without touching anything, she could see details that caught her attention. Her father had taught her to observe before tinkering with anything. "Can I open the hood?" "It's already open," said Mike. "No, the inner hood. The electrical part." Frank hesitated. What did an 11-year-old girl know about truck electrical systems? "Just to look," she insisted. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Frank finally agreed, more out of curiosity than belief she could help. Emily climbed onto a box to get a better view and began examining the wires and connections. "When was the last time you worked on this?" she asked. Yesterday, replied Dave. We replaced some parts. Which parts? Some valves, some sensors, engine stuff. Emily kept looking. There was something odd about some of the connections, but she couldn't pinpoint what. Her father always said old engines had their secrets, and sometimes the problem was where you least expected it. Do you have the old parts you took out? We threw them away, said Mike. Why? Just curious. Truthfully, it wasn't just curiosity. Robert had taught her that old parts could tell a story, if they were worn abnormally, had strange marks, or looked different than they should. Just then, the shop door opened, and William Thompson walked in. He was a man in his early 40s, with graying hair and a permanently worried expression. He ran one of the largest transport companies in the area and had no patience for delays. Frank, how's my truck coming along? Frank wiped his hands on a dirty rag and approached the customer. We're working on it, Mr. Thompson. Should be ready by today. Should? Or will it? Because I've got 3 loads waiting to go out tomorrow morning, and if this truck isn't running, it'll be ready, don't worry. William glanced at the truck and saw Emily still hunched over the engine. And that girl there? What's she doing? She's the daughter of a mechanic we know. Just taking a look. A mechanic's daughter? William stepped closer. And where's her father? In the hospital, Emily replied, climbing down from the box. He had an accident. William studied her for a few seconds. There was something about the girl's seriousness that struck him. She didn't seem to be playing around. So, you know about engines? A little, she said modestly. What do you think's wrong with my truck? Frank quickly intervened. Mr. Thompson, we've already identified the issue. It's just a matter of time to fix it. I asked her, said William, keeping his eyes on Emily. Emily looked at Frank, who subtly gestured for her to stay quiet, but she chose to be honest. There's something odd about the new parts you put in. Odd how? I can't explain it well. My dad always said to be suspicious when things look different than usual. William grew even more interested. Different how? The markings on the parts. They don't seem to match what they should be. Frank felt his face grow hot. Kid, don't talk nonsense. Those parts are all genuine. I didn't say they weren't, Emily replied. I just said there's something strange about them. William moved closer to the engine and began inspecting the newly installed parts. He wasn't a mechanic, but he'd driven trucks for over 20 years and knew when something was off. Where'd you buy these parts from? From Mr. Anderson, as always, replied Dave. He's been our supplier for years. And was he here when you installed them? He was. He even helped pick out the right parts. Emily kept watching. Something was bothering her, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Her father always said that if something didn't seem right, it usually wasn't. Can I ask you something? She said to William. Of course. Did you notice when the problem started? Was it sudden or gradual? William thought for a moment. It was strange. The truck was running perfectly in the morning. Then in the afternoon, when the driver went to pick up a load, it started acting up. The same day? The same day. Emily looked at the mechanics. Problems that appeared out of nowhere usually had specific causes. It wasn't normal wear and tear. Something had changed. Did you make any adjustments that day? No, Frank said quickly. The truck came in already having issues. But was Mr. Anderson here that day? The silence that followed spoke volumes. The 3 mechanics exchanged glances in a way that didn't escape Emily or William. Why do you ask? William wanted to know. My dad always said that when a good engine suddenly stops working, it's usually because someone tampered with it. What are you implying? Frank snapped. I'm not implying anything. I'm just trying to understand. William was starting to grow suspicious too. He'd known these mechanics for years, but he'd never had such a simple problem take so long to fix. Frank, I want to take a closer look at those new parts. Of course, Mr. Thompson. No problem at all. But as William moved in to inspect the parts, Emily saw something that made her heart race. One of the valves had an almost imperceptible mark, a tiny scratch her father had taught her to recognize. Mr. Thompson, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Could you give me just a minute? William agreed and stepped back. Emily climbed onto the crate again and examined the valve more closely. The mark was there, small, but clear to anyone who knew what to look for. It was exactly what her father had shown her 2 weeks earlier when they'd worked together over the weekend. A mark that meant the part was counterfeit. "My dad taught me something," she said, stepping down and looking straight at William. "He said there are people who sell fake parts and they leave specific marks for those who know where to look." "What are you saying?" William asked. "This valve here," she pointed, "has a mark my dad taught me to recognize. It's counterfeit." The effect was immediate. Frank turned red with anger. "Now that's too much. Young lady, are you accusing us of using fake parts?" "I'm not accusing anyone," Emily said calmly. "I'm just saying what I see." William examined the valve more closely. He didn't know how to spot counterfeit marks, but the girl's seriousness impressed him. "How do you know this?" "My dad showed me. He said there's a counterfeit parts ring in the area, and some suppliers are involved without the shops even knowing." "Some shops," Mike corrected nervously, "because we sure don't know anything about it." Just then, the shop door opened again, and in walked Gary, the parts supplier. He was a thin, bespectacled man in his 50s carrying a box of new parts. "Brought the parts you ordered," he said, stopping when he saw the group gathered around the truck. "Mr. Anderson," William said, "this young lady here is saying the parts you installed in my truck are counterfeit." Gary visibly paled. "Counterfeit? That's ridiculous. All my parts are genuine." "Then explain this mark here," said Emily, pointing to the valve. Gary stepped closer, adjusted his glasses and looked where she was pointing. For a few seconds he said nothing. I don't know what she's talking about. My dad taught me that this specific mark means the part was made in an underground factory in rural Michigan," Emily continued, "and that it usually fails in less than a week." Mr. Thompson looked at Gary with an expression that left no doubt about what he was thinking. "Is this true, Gary?" "Of course not. This girl doesn't know what she's talking about." But Emily wasn't finished. "If you take the valve out and look inside, you'll see the material is different too. Weaker, more brittle." "How do you know that?" asked Frank. "Because my dad has seen this kind of part before, and he taught me that when a counterfeit part is installed, it can damage other engine components." The statement made Mr. Thompson even more concerned. "What other parts?" "Depending on the part, it can ruin the whole injection system. Then, instead of a simple fix, it becomes a much more expensive problem." Gary tried to slip away discreetly, but Mr. Thompson called him back. "You're not going anywhere. I want you to take that valve out right now and prove it's genuine." "There's no need to remove anything," Gary protested. "All my parts come with a warranty." "Then there's no problem taking it out to show us," Mr. Thompson insisted. Frank was in a tough spot. If there really were counterfeit parts here, he could lose not just this customer, but his entire reputation. "All right," he said. "Let's take the valve out and see." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. As Frank gathered the tools to remove the valve, Emily kept inspecting other parts. What she saw worried her even more. "There's more," she said. "More what?" asked Mr. Thompson. "More parts with strange marks. Here, here, and here." She pointed to 3 different spots on the engine. Gary grew increasingly nervous. He started backing toward the door. "I have to go. I've got other deliveries to make." "You're not going anywhere," Mr. Thompson said firmly. "I want you to stay until we sort this out." Frank had removed the first valve and brought it over for everyone to examine. Even without technical knowledge, it was clear the material wasn't right. The part looked flimsier, with a rougher finish. "This isn't genuine," Mr. Thompson said. "Anyone can see that." I bought it from a trusted supplier," Gary stammered. "Which supplier?" A rep who comes around this area." Emily moved closer to the removed valve and inspected it carefully. There were more details confirming her suspicions. "Look here," she said, pointing to a specific spot. "Genuine parts have a tiny engraved number right here. This one doesn't." "How do you know that?" asked Dave, impressed. "My dad showed me. He said every manufacturer has its own markings, and counterfeiters usually don't bother with these small details." Mr. Thompson was furious. "Gary, how many fake parts have you sold to this shop?" "I didn't know they were fake. The rep swore they were genuine. And you believed him without checking?" "He had documents, invoices, everything looked legit." Emily kept examining the other suspicious parts. On each one, she found small signs confirming they were counterfeit, missing marks, wrong numbers, inferior materials. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "if you want this truck to run right, you'll have to replace all these parts with genuine ones." "And how much will that cost?" Frank did a quick calculation in his head. "At least $3,000. William exploded. $3,000 for counterfeit parts you installed in my truck? "We didn't know they were fake," protested Frank. "And that's my problem, your mechanics. It was your job to check." The argument was heating up when Emily had an idea. "Can I make a suggestion?" Everyone turned to her. "If Mr. Anderson really didn't know the parts were fake, he should still have the supplier's invoices. With those, we can track down who's selling counterfeit parts in the area." "And how does that help?" asked William. "If you can prove Mr. Anderson was fooled too, maybe he won't have to cover the loss alone, and you can report the scheme to protect others." The suggestion made sense. Gary, seeing a chance to shift some blame, agreed immediately. "I have all the invoices at my shop. I can get them now." "Go get them," said William. "But be back in half an hour. If you're not, I'm coming after you." As Gary left to fetch the documents, Emily kept examining the engine. Something else was bothering her, but she couldn't pinpoint what. "Can I ask you something?" she said to William. "Sure. You said the problem started suddenly. Are you sure nothing was different that day?" William thought harder. "Now that you mention it, the driver did say the truck was making a strange noise in the morning, but it only started failing in the afternoon." "What kind of noise?" "Like something was knocking inside the engine." Emily looked at the engine again, now noticing details she'd missed before. Then she saw something that made everything click. "I know what happened," she said. "What?" "It wasn't just the fake parts. Someone tampered with other things too." She pointed to a small hose that was slightly loose. "This hose shouldn't be like this. And look." She showed a bolt that was out of place. "This was messed with recently." Frank stepped closer to see. "You're right. Someone worked on this after we installed the parts." "But who would want to sabotage the engine?" asked William. "Someone trying to hide the fact the parts were fake," replied Emily. "If the engine had other issues, no one would suspect the new parts." The revelation left everyone silent. This wasn't just about a supplier selling fakes. It was a bigger scheme, with sabotage to cover the evidence. "But why would someone do this?" asked Dave. "To buy time," explained Emily. "If the problem seemed unrelated, the customer would leave happy, and when the engine failed again, it'd be blamed on another mechanic." William was impressed. "How old are you again?" 11. "And you learned all this from your dad?" "He always took me to work on weekends, said I might want to follow in his footsteps someday." "And do you?" Emily hesitated. She'd never seriously considered it. She always thought mechanics was a man's job, that she should do something else. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've never really thought about it." "Well, you should," said William. "You've got a natural talent." Just then, Gary returned with a folder full of documents. He seemed calmer, as if convinced he wasn't to blame. "I brought all the invoices from the last 6 months," he said. Emily examined them carefully. Something was off, but she couldn't place it. "Are all these invoices from the same company?" "Yes, from National Auto Parts, Inc." "And do you know this company?" "Not personally. The representative who approached me said they were new to the area but had very competitive prices." "Very low prices?" Emily Johnson asked. "Extremely low. That's why I thought it was a good opportunity." Emily looked at Mr. Thompson. "My father always said that when the price is too low, there's usually something wrong." "And you think there's something wrong here?" "I do, but I'm not sure what." Mr. Thompson examined the invoices. To him, they seemed normal, but Emily had shown an eye for detail that impressed him. "What do you think we should do?" "I think you should talk to other shops in the area. See if they've also bought parts from this company." "Why?" "Because if it's a big scheme, they wouldn't sell to just one shop. They'd try to sell to as many as possible." The suggestion made sense. Frank knew several other mechanics in the area and could easily make a few calls. "I'll call Mr. Miller at the downtown shop," he said, "and Ryan too." While Frank made the calls, Emily kept inspecting the truck's engine. There were more details catching her attention, small things only someone with deep technical knowledge would notice. "I found something else," she said. "What now?" Mr. Thompson asked. "There's oil leaking here, very little, almost unnoticeable, but it's leaking." "Oil leaks are normal in old engines," Mike said. "Not in this spot," Emily replied, "and not like this. This was done on purpose." She pointed to a small hole in a gasket that looked like it had been made with a sharp object. "Someone punctured this so the oil would leak slowly. In a few days, the engine would seize from lack of lubrication." The discovery made Mr. Thompson furious. "This is outright sabotage." "Seems like it," Emily agreed. Frank finished his calls with a worried expression. "I spoke to 3 shops. All of them bought parts from the same company in the last few months, and they're all having similar problems." "What kind of problems?" "Engines that run fine for a few days, then start failing. Customers complaining, losses." Mr. Thompson shook his head. "This is an organized scheme. It's not just a supplier selling bad parts by accident." Emily had reached the same conclusion. "My father always said some people do this on purpose. They sell cheap counterfeit parts, and when the engines start acting up, they offer better parts at regular prices." "Regular parts?" "Genuine ones, but sold as if they're doing you a special favor." The explanation made Mr. Thompson see the whole scheme. First, they sold cheap fakes to attract customers. Then, when problems arose, they came back offering genuine parts as a special solution, charging high prices. "What about the mechanics?" "Most don't know anything," Emily said. "They're victims too." Gary, who had stayed quiet the whole time, finally spoke. "That's exactly what happened to me. The rep came back last week offering premium parts to fix the issues some customers were having." "And you bought them?" "I bought a few. Paid double the price of the others." Mr. Thompson was increasingly impressed by Emily's sharpness. "How do you know all this?" "My father investigated a similar case last year. He found out there was a scheme like this running in another region. That's why he taught me how to spot fake parts." "What happened to the scheme he investigated?" "He reported it, and the people behind it were arrested, but he said they'd probably try again somewhere else." "And you think it's the same group?" "Could be, or it could be people who learned from them." Just then, a woman in her 40s with blonde hair tied in a simple bun walked into the shop. It was Sarah, Emily Johnson's mother. "Emily, what's this about you coming to work here?" "Hi, Mum. I was just helping out." "Helping? You're just a child. You should be in school, not in a repair shop." Frank approached Sarah. "Ma'am, your daughter helped us a lot today. She uncovered a counterfeit parts scheme that was harming several customers." "Counterfeit parts?" William Thompson introduced himself and quickly explained everything that had happened. Sarah listened with growing astonishment. "Did she learn all this from Robert?" she asked. "From what she said, yes," replied William. "And I can tell you she knows more than many professional mechanics I've met." Sarah looked at her daughter with a mix of pride and worry. "Emily, you can't go around getting into trouble." "I didn't get into trouble, Mum. I just came because Dad had promised to fix Mr. Thompson's truck." "But you're a child." "She may be a child, but she saved my business," said William. "If it weren't for her, I'd have suffered huge losses, and this shop would have lost its reputation." Sarah was still trying to process everything when another person arrived at the shop. It was Mr. Miller, the owner of another repair shop in the area. Frank had called him to discuss the counterfeit parts scheme. "Frank, what's this about counterfeit parts?" "Brian, have you bought parts from National Auto Parts, Inc. in the last few months?" "I have." "Why?" "Because they're all fake." Mr. Miller turned pale. "What do you mean, fake?" Emily stepped forward and showed him the same markings she had identified earlier. Mr. Miller examined the parts carefully and shook his head. "That can't be. I've had these parts in my shop for weeks." "And have you had any issues with them?" asked Emily. "I have. Some customers complained their cars weren't running right after repairs." "What kind of problems?" "Engine failures, excessive fuel consumption, things like that." "Those are symptoms of counterfeit parts," explained Emily. "They work for a while, but they don't have the quality of genuine ones." Mr. Miller was visibly shaken. "Does this mean I'll have to replace all the parts I installed?" "If you want the engines to run properly, yes," said William, "but that'll cost me a fortune." "That's why it's important to report the scheme," said Emily. "If you can prove you were deceived too, maybe you won't have to bear the loss alone." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Mr. Miller agreed to join forces with Frank to investigate the scheme. They decided to reach out to other shops in the area and try to track down the National Auto Parts Inc. representative. "Does anyone have this representative's phone number?" asked William. "I do," said Gary. "But the last time I tried calling, it said the number didn't exist." "What about the company's address?" "I have that too, but I've never been there in person." Emily examined the address on the invoice. "My dad always said that when a company only sells through representatives and never receives customers at their headquarters, there's usually something fishy going on." "Why?" "Because reputable companies want customers to see their facilities. It's a way to show reliability." William was increasingly convinced this was a well-organized criminal scheme. "I think we should go to this address and see what we find." "I'll go with you," said Frank. "Me too," said Mr. Miller. "What about me?" asked Emily. "You're going home," said Sarah firmly. "You've done enough for one day." "But Mum—" "No buts. You have school tomorrow, and you can't keep getting involved in dangerous things." William turned to Sarah. "Mum, with all due respect, your daughter has an exceptional talent. She managed to spot things that we adults couldn't see." "I know she's smart, but she's a child and children belong in school." "But she could stay in school while also learning more about mechanics," suggested Mr. Thompson. "I own a transport company, and I always need skilled people." "She's 11. I know, I'm talking about the future. If she wants, once she finishes her studies, there will always be a place for her at my company." Emily looked at her mother hopefully. For the first time, she was seriously considering following in her father's footsteps. "Mom, can I at least go with you to the company's address, just to see?" Sarah hesitated. She knew her daughter had inherited her husband's investigative curiosity, and that it would be hard to keep her away from it. "All right," she finally said. "But you stay in the car. Don't get out for any reason." "Okay." The group got ready to head to the address of National Auto Parts Inc. Mr. Thompson would drive his car, taking Emily and Sarah. Frank and Mr. Miller would go in another vehicle, along with Gary. The address was in an industrial area about 20 kilometers away. During the trip, Mr. Thompson talked to Emily about mechanics and realized she knew much more than she had shown in the shop. "Did your father teach you about electrical systems too?" "A little. He said modern engines are half mechanics, half electronics." "What about diagnosing problems?" "He taught me to observe symptoms and ask questions. He said engines don't lie. If you know how to ask the right questions, they'll tell you exactly what's wrong." Sarah listened to the conversation with mixed feelings. On one hand, she was proud of her daughter's intelligence. On the other, she worried about such a young girl getting involved in such serious matters. "Mr. Thompson, do you really think she has a future in this field?" "Ma'am, with all due respect, your daughter has an intuition for mechanics that I've never seen in anyone, not even in mechanics with decades of experience. But it's such a tough profession for a woman." "Times are changing," said Mr. Thompson. "More and more women are entering fields that used to be just for men, and with technology advancing, the work is becoming less physical and more technical." Emily paid attention to every word. She had never thought about these issues before, but she was starting to realize she might truly have a special talent. When they arrived at the given address, they found an empty warehouse with a "For Rent" sign out front. Obviously, National Auto Parts Inc. had never operated there. "Fake address," Frank noted. "As expected," said Mr. Thompson. Emily got out of the car against her mother's instructions and approached the warehouse. There were some clues there the adults hadn't noticed. "Look here," she said, pointing at the ground. "Very fresh tire marks." "So what?" "So someone was here recently. Maybe they used this place before abandoning it. She kept looking and found something even more interesting. There's trash over there, scattered papers. Mr. Thompson went to check and found some torn documents in the trash. They were fragments of invoices and purchase orders. There are some names here, he said, piecing them together. Looks like they're from other shops in the area. Mr. Miller recognized a few names. I know these shops. They all buy parts from independent suppliers. That means the scheme is bigger than we thought, said Emily. How so? They weren't just selling to you, they were selling to all the small shops in the area. The discovery made Mr. Thompson realize the scale of the problem. If this is true, hundreds of vehicles could be running with counterfeit parts. And when those parts start failing all at once, it'll be chaos, Emily finished. Sarah was impressed by her daughter's reasoning, but also worried about the seriousness of the situation. This isn't something you should handle alone. It's a matter for the police. She's right, agreed Mr. Thompson, but we need more evidence before filing a report. What kind of evidence? A list of all the shops that bought these parts, as many counterfeit parts as possible, and if we can get it, some information about who's behind the scheme. Emily had an idea. Here's what we can do. You reach out to all the shops you know and ask about National Auto Parts Inc. I can help examine the parts they bought and identify which ones are fake. No, Sarah said immediately. You're not going around shops tinkering with engines. But Mom, no buts. If you want her help, you can bring the suspicious parts to our house. She'll examine them there and you can take them back. The suggestion made sense. It was safer and allowed Emily to help without exposing herself too much. Deal, said Mr. Thompson. Tomorrow we'll start contacting other shops. On the way back, Emily kept thinking about everything that had happened that day. That morning, she was just a girl worried about helping her hospitalized father. By the afternoon, she was involved in investigating a counterfeit scheme that could affect hundreds of people. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you really think I should consider becoming a mechanic? Sarah sighed. It was a tough question, involving not just her daughter's skills, but also the family's expectations and the realities of the profession. Sweetheart, you're very smart. You can be anything you want in life. But do you think mechanics is a good choice for a woman? I think what matters is doing what you love and what you're good at. And you're clearly good at this. But you're also good at so many other things. You do well in school, you love reading, you're great at math. You have a world of possibilities ahead. Mr. Thompson chimed in. Can I make a suggestion? Of course, said Sarah. Emily could keep up with her regular studies, but come help out at my transport company on weekends. Nothing heavy, just observing, learning. That way she can figure out if she really likes the field. And if she does. Then she can take a technical course in mechanics after high school. With her talent, it'd be easy to get a scholarship. Emily liked the idea, but she knew the final decision was her mother's. What do you think, Mom? Sarah thought for a few minutes before answering. I think we can try, but with a few conditions. What? First, school stays the priority. If your grades drop, it stops. Okay. Second, no working with dangerous machinery or heavy labor. Deal. And third, at the first sign this is interfering with your childhood, it stops immediately. Emily agreed to all the conditions. She was excited about the chance to learn more about mechanics, but also knew she had to prove she could balance everything. When they got home, they found a surprise waiting. Robert had been temporarily discharged from the hospital and was sitting on the porch, his cast resting on a chair. Dad! Emily shouted, running to hug him. Hey, sweetheart, how was your day? Dad, you won't believe what happened. Emily told him the whole story, from her visit to the shop to the discovery of the counterfeit parts scheme. Robert listened with growing attention. You spotted signs of counterfeiting on your own. I remembered what you taught me about that case last year, and you found signs of sabotage in the engine. The loose hose, the tampered bolt, and that tiny hole in the gasket. Robert shook his head, impressed. Sweetheart, you did a job that many experienced mechanics couldn't pull off. Do you really think I have a talent for this, Dad? Robert looked at his daughter with pride. Emily, you've always had talent. The question is whether you want to develop it. I do, at least I want to try. Then here's what we'll do, said Robert. While I'm recovering, you can help me with some light jobs around the house. Let's see how you do. What kind of jobs? Small repairs, preventive maintenance, things that don't require much physical effort. Sarah agreed with the idea. It was a way for Emily to learn without putting herself in dangerous situations. In the following days, Mr. Thompson and the local mechanics began investigating the counterfeit parts scheme. They discovered that at least 15 shops had bought products from National Auto Parts Inc. and that hundreds of vehicles were running with fake parts. Emily helped by examining the suspicious parts brought to their house. Her ability to spot counterfeits impressed everyone, and soon she became the go-to person in the area for such diagnostics. One afternoon, Mr. Thompson came home with important news. Emily, we managed to track down the National Auto Parts rep. How? One of the mechanics remembered he'd left a business card with a different phone number. We called it, and the number is real. And then? We set up a meeting with him tomorrow. We'll pretend we're a shop interested in buying parts. Good idea, but you'll be careful, right? Of course. And you're staying out of this. It's too dangerous for a kid. Emily agreed. But deep down, she was curious to see how it would all end. The next day, Mr. Thompson and Frank met the rep at a downtown cafe. The man introduced himself as Timothy Collins and said he represented several auto parts companies. What kind of products are you interested in? Asked Tim. Diesel engine parts, said Frank. Our shop mostly works on trucks and buses. Great. I've got excellent products at very competitive prices. Tim showed a catalogue with dozens of parts, all priced well below market value. How do you manage such low prices? Asked Mr. Thompson. We buy straight from the manufacturer, no middlemen, and since our company is growing, we can negotiate bigger volumes. What about quality? All parts come with a 6-month warranty. If there's any issue, we replace them free of charge. Mr. Thompson and Frank asked several technical questions, and Tim answered them all confidently. He seemed to really know his stuff. Can we tour your company's facilities? Asked Frank. Tim hesitated for a moment. We're actually relocating right now, but I can arrange a visit next week. What if we want to place an order today? No problem. I can deliver in 48 hours. Mr. Thompson and Frank decided to place a small test order. Tim seemed pleased and said he'd call the next day to confirm delivery. As they left the cafe, Mr. Thompson immediately called Emily. So, how'd it go? The guy seems professional, knows his parts, has an organized catalog. If I didn't know the truth, I'd buy from him without a second thought. Did he suspect anything? Didn't seem like it. He was even excited about the order. And now? Now we wait for the delivery. If he brings fake parts, we've got our proof. Emily was eager to see the outcome. She spent the next 2 days helping her dad with small repairs and studying more about spotting counterfeit parts. Robert was amazed at how quickly she learned. Sweetheart, you really have a gift for this. You think so, Dad? I'm sure of it. In 2 weeks, you've learned things that took me years to master. It's because you're a good teacher. It's more than that. You have a natural intuition for understanding how machines work. On the morning of the parts delivery, William called Emily. He's here. He's unloading the parts at the shop now. Can I go see? You can, but keep your distance. We don't want him suspecting anything. Emily asked her mother to take her to the shop. When they arrived, Tim was just finishing unloading the parts from a white van. These are the parts you ordered, he said to Frank. All original, with invoices. Great. Let's check them. Tim said goodbye and left. As soon as he was gone, William signaled for Emily to come closer. Now it's your turn. Let's see if these parts are genuine or fake. Emily examined the parts one by one. It didn't take long for her to find the marks she was looking for. All fake, she said. Same identification marks as the others. Are you sure? Absolutely. Look here, here and here. She pointed to the telltale signs. This guy is selling the same counterfeit parts you bought before. William now had the proof he needed. Tim Collins was knowingly selling fake parts using a shell company and forged documents. Now we can finally report him, he said. But first let's gather all the evidence, Emily suggested. All the fake parts we found, testimonies from the affected mechanics, the Shell company's documents. Why all that? My dad always said when you report someone, you need enough proof so they can't escape on legal technicalities. William agreed. They spent the next few days organizing all the evidence and collecting testimonies from other mechanics and affected customers. When they finally filed the report, they had a complete dossier showing the extent of the counterfeit scheme. The police were impressed by the quality of the evidence. "Who put this investigation together?" asked the detective. "It was a team effort," said William. "But the one who identified the fake parts and uncovered the scheme was Robert Johnson's daughter." Robert's daughter? How old is she? 11. The detective couldn't believe it. 11, and she understands engine parts. "Better than many professional mechanics," William assured him. The police investigation confirmed everything Emily and the mechanics had discovered. Tim Collins was indeed part of a criminal operation spanning several regions of the state, selling counterfeit parts through shell companies. When Tim was arrested, he tried to deny everything, but the evidence was undeniable. Along with the fake parts, documents linking him to a well-structured counterfeit network were found in his home. The story of the 11-year-old girl who dismantled a counterfeit parts scheme spread quickly through the area. Local newspapers ran stories about the case, and Emily became a minor celebrity. But for her, the most important thing was the recognition of her own talent. For the first time, she was seriously considering following in her father's footsteps. William kept his promise and offered Emily an internship at his transport company. Every weekend she worked with the company's mechanics, always supervised and handling only age-appropriate tasks. Her talent for diagnostics grew quickly. Within weeks, she could identify engine problems just by listening to the sounds they made. "Dad, I think I found my calling," she said one afternoon after helping solve a complex issue with a truck engine. "Are you sure?" "I am. I like figuring out how things work, solving problems, and I think I really have a talent for it." Robert smiled. "Then let's move forward. But no rush. You still have plenty of time to learn and make a final decision." "What if I want to study mechanical engineering later?" "Even better. It's going to be a complete mechanic who understands both practice and theory." Sarah, who was initially worried about her daughter's choice, began to feel prouder and prouder. She saw how Emily was maturing with responsibility and excelling in everything she did. 2 months after the counterfeit parts incident, news arrived that surprised everyone. A major vehicle manufacturer had offered Emily a scholarship, which included a technical course in mechanics and a guaranteed job after graduation. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," said the company representative. "We rarely see someone so young with such a talent for automotive diagnostics." "But she's only 11, Sarah said. "Exactly why. We have time to shape her and teach her everything she needs to know. When she graduates, she'll be one of the best professionals in the country." Emily was tempted by the offer, but decided to talk to her family before making any decision. "What do you all think?" "I think it's an amazing opportunity," said Robert. "But you don't have to decide right now." "What do you mean?" "You can keep studying normally, learning mechanics on weekends, and when you finish high school, you can decide whether to take the scholarship or choose another path." "What if I change my mind?" "Then you take another path. You're smart and talented at many things." The conversation reassured Emily. She didn't have to make a final decision now. She could keep exploring her skills and discovering what she truly loved. In the following months, she became a constant presence at Mr. Thompson's transport company. All the mechanics there already knew her and respected her technical opinions. "It's impressive," commented Dave, one of the most experienced mechanics. "She can spot problems that take me hours to figure out." "It's a natural talent," agreed Mr. Thompson. "You don't see that often." One day, a truck arrived at the transport company with a problem no one could solve. The engine ran fine in most situations, but failed whenever the vehicle climbed a specific hill. "We've checked everything," said the mechanic in charge. "Injection system, filters, sensors, everything's working perfectly." "And it only fails on that hill?" Emily asked. "Only there. On other inclines, it runs fine." Emily thought for a few minutes. "Did you check the fuel pump?" "We did. It's operating within parameters. What about fuel pressure at different angles? The mechanic paused. No, we didn't specifically check that. It might be that the pump works fine on level ground, but can't maintain pressure when the tank tilts a certain way. It was a smart hypothesis. They tested the fuel pressure at different angles and found Emily was right. The pump had a flaw that only showed up at a specific tilt. How did you think of that? Asked the mechanic. My dad always said that when a problem only happens in one specific situation, you have to think about what's different in that situation. And you thought about the tank's angle. I thought about everything that changes when the truck goes uphill. Engine pressure, temperature, incline, and the tank's angle was the only thing you hadn't tested. The case further strengthened Emily's reputation as an exceptional troubleshooter. Mr. Thompson decided it was time to formalize her role in the company. Emily, I want to make a proposal to you and your family. What kind of proposal? I want to officially hire you as the company's technical consultant. Part-time, just on weekends with a salary and everything, but I'm only 11. Legally, you'd be registered as an apprentice. It's a special category for minors with exceptional aptitude. Emily was thrilled by the offer. It would be her first official job and in a field she truly loved. Can I talk to my parents? Of course, but I want you to know this isn't a favor. It's because you truly add value to the company. At home, Robert and Sarah were proud of the offer, but also worried about the responsibilities it would bring. She's too young for a job, said Sarah. But it's a unique opportunity to learn and grow, Robert argued. What if it interferes with her studies? We can make a deal, suggested Emily. If my grades drop, I'll quit and focus only on school. After much discussion, they decided to accept the offer, but with strict conditions about schedules and responsibilities. Emily's first day as an official employee at the transport company was unforgettable. She arrived early, wearing coveralls tailored to her size, and was formally introduced to the whole team. This is our new technical consultant, said William. I know she's young, but she has exceptional talent. I expect everyone to treat her with the respect she deserves. Some of the older employees were skeptical at first, but they quickly recognized Emily's skills when she solved problems they couldn't diagnose. In no time, she became a key part of the team. Customers even started requesting her specifically to inspect their vehicles for complex issues. That girl has a gift, remarked Mr. Anderson, a longtime client of the company. She looks at an engine and sees things we don't. It's true, William agreed. I've never seen anything like it. A year after the counterfeit parts incident, Emily was known throughout the region as an automotive diagnostics expert. Repair shops from other towns began seeking her out for tough cases. Dad, sometimes I can't believe all this started when you had to go to the hospital, she said one afternoon. That's life, sweetheart. Sometimes problems open doors we didn't even know existed. Do you regret teaching me mechanics? Regret it? Never. I'm proud every single day seeing how much you've grown. What if I want to study engineering? You will. With your talent and the hands-on experience you're gaining, you'll be one of the best engineers in the country. Emily smiled. She was only 12, but she already knew exactly what she wanted to do with her life, and most importantly, she was certain she could achieve it. At school, her classmates saw her as a celebrity. The story of the girl who uncovered a criminal scheme had spread, and many admired her for her courage and intelligence. Emily, is it true you work at a transport company? A classmate asked. It's true, but only on weekends. And you can actually fix trucks. I don't fix them alone. I help figure out the problem, and the mechanics do the repairs. But how did you learn all this? My dad taught me, and then I learned by doing. Her teachers were also impressed by the maturity Emily had developed. Her grades remained excellent, and she balanced school and work well. She's proof that it's possible to juggle different interests, her math teacher remarked, and she excels at everything. One day, a case arrived at the transport company that would test Emily's skills to the limit. A customer brought in a truck with a series of seemingly unrelated issues: overheating, power loss, excessive fuel consumption, and strange engine noises. I've taken it to 5 different shops, the customer said, discouraged. Each one diagnosed a different problem, fixed it, and the other issues remained. What problems did they identify? Emily asked. One said it was the radiator, another said the air filter, another blamed the injection system. And did it work temporarily? It worked for a few days, but then the problems came back. Emily examined the truck more carefully than ever. There was something strange about it, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Can I ask a few questions about the vehicle's history? Of course. When did the problem start? About 2 months ago. Was it gradual or sudden? Gradual. First it was just overheating, then the other issues started popping up. Did you make any modifications to the truck recently? No. Well, I installed a new sound system about 3 months ago. Emily paid close attention to that detail. What kind of sound system? A really powerful one, with an amplifier, subwoofer, that kind of stuff. And who installed it? A guy a friend recommended, said he knew what he was doing. Emily asked to inspect the sound system. It was indeed powerful, with multiple amplifiers and a complex electrical setup. Mr. Thompson, can you help me check something? Sure. I want to test if there's any interference between the sound system and the engine systems. It was a bold theory. Most mechanics wouldn't think to connect sound systems to engine trouble. They temporarily disconnected the sound system and ran some tests. To everyone's surprise, several of the issues improved significantly. No way, said the customer. How can a sound system affect the engine? If the wiring wasn't done right, it can cause electromagnetic interference, Emily explained. That can confuse the engine's sensors and cause all sorts of problems. But the mechanics who checked the truck didn't notice, probably because they didn't think to link the two, and because the problems don't happen all the time, only when there's interference. They called in an automotive electrician who confirmed Emily's diagnosis. The sound system had been improperly installed, creating interference that affected multiple engine systems. Young lady, you're a genius, the customer said, amazed. 5 shops couldn't figure this out, and you did it in a few hours. It's about asking the right questions, Emily replied, echoing a phrase she'd learned from her father. The sound system case further boosted Emily's reputation. Soon she was getting invitations to speak at technical schools and even universities. Dad, I've been invited to give a lecture at the university on automotive diagnostics. Really? Really? They want me to talk about identifying complex engine issues. Robert was moved. Sweetheart, when I started as a mechanic, I never imagined my daughter would be lecturing engineers. You taught me everything. I taught you the basics. The rest you figured out on your own. The university lecture was a success. Emily spoke to an audience of mechanical engineering students and professors, sharing real cases she'd solved and explaining her diagnostic approach. The key is not to limit yourself to the obvious, she said. When an engine has a problem, it's trying to tell us something. We just have to listen. The students asked plenty of technical questions, and Emily answered them all confidently. By the end, she received a standing ovation. That young woman has a bright future ahead, one professor remarked. At her age, she already understands mechanical systems better than many professionals. After the lecture, several students approached Emily to learn more about her journey. How did you learn all this so young? One student asked. I started by helping my dad and never stopped asking questions. I think curiosity matters more than anything. And did you always know you wanted to work in mechanics? Actually, no, I stumbled into it when I had to fill in for my dad in an emergency. But once I started, I realized I really enjoyed it. What advice would you give to someone just starting in the field? Observe a lot and ask plenty of questions, and never settle for the first answer. Sometimes the real problem is hidden behind the obvious one. In the following months, Emily continued to grow professionally. Her reputation spread beyond the region, and she began receiving inquiries from other states. Mr. Thompson decided to expand the transport company's services to include specialized technical consulting, with Emily as their key competitive advantage. You've become our trademark, he said. We have clients coming from far away just for you to inspect their vehicles. That scares me a little, Emily admitted. Why? What if one day I can't solve a problem? What if I let people down? Emily, you're 13 and have already solved hundreds of complex cases. It's normal if sometimes you can't fix everything, no one can. But people expect so much from me. And you've lived up to those expectations. But remember, you're still learning. You have plenty of time to grow even more. The conversation reassured Emily. Sometimes she forgot how young she still was and how much time she had to develop professionally. One day, a particularly meaningful case arrived at the transport company. A client brought in an old car, a 1975 Chevelle which had belonged to her late husband. He loved this car, the woman said, tears in her eyes. Took care of it like it was his child, but after he passed, the car started having issues and never ran properly again. What kind of issues? Emily asked. It doesn't start right, makes strange noises, smokes. I've taken it to several shops, but no one could get it back to how it was. Emily examined the Chevelle with special care. She knew that car meant far more than just transportation to that woman. What she found saddened her. The car had been repaired so many times with the wrong parts and shoddy work that it was almost unrecognizable inside. Ma'am, can I be honest with you? Of course, dear. This car was mistreated by the shops you went to. There's so much wrong that it'll be hard to fix. The woman began to cry. So there's no hope? There is hope, but it'll take a lot of work and cost a lot, because almost everything needs to be redone. How much would it cost? Emily mentally estimated the costs and realized it would be too expensive for an elderly woman. Ma'am, can I make a proposal? What proposal? If you're not in a hurry, I can fix the car in my free time, charging only for the parts. It'd be a personal project for me. Why would you do that? Because I know how much this car means to you, and because it'd be an interesting challenge for me. The woman was moved. Sweetheart, you're an angel. Mr. Thompson supported Emily's idea. It would be a great opportunity for her to learn about classic cars and further develop her skills. The Chevelle project took several months. Emily worked on it every weekend, always under the supervision of more experienced mechanics for the riskier parts. Little by little, she restored the car to its original condition. Every part was chosen carefully, every adjustment made with precision. Dad, I'm learning so much from this project, she said one afternoon. What are you learning? That mechanics isn't just about fixing problems. It's also about preserving history, taking care of things that matter to people. That's an important lesson, Robert agreed. Sometimes we forget there's a human story behind every vehicle. When the Chevelle was finally finished, the transformation was stunning. The car was running like new, with the engine purring smoothly and all systems working perfectly. The delivery of the car was an emotional moment. The lady couldn't stop crying when she saw the restored Chevelle. It looks just like how my husband kept it, she said. You brought it back to me. It was a pleasure working on this project, said Emily. I learned so much. How much do I owe you? Just the cost of the parts, as we agreed. The lady insisted on paying more, but Emily refused. For her, the satisfaction of seeing the car running perfectly was payment enough. The case of the Chevelle became a milestone in Emily's career. It showed that she didn't just have technical skills, but also the sensitivity to understand the emotional value of vehicles. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of Emily's story and how she managed to overcome all the prejudice. Do you believe determination and talent are enough to break barriers? Leave your opinion in the comments, and if you liked the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one.